Hello everyone, welcome to Basic Anatomy and Physiology course. Today we will start our course by discussing the introductions about anatomy and physiology. So introduction to human anatomy and physiology, which is chapter 1 on your textbook. So anatomy and physiology, especially human anatomy and physiology, started being used by early healers that depends, sometimes they depend on the superstitions and magic, but they also learned a little bit about human body structure and function. And then it was followed by observations of injuries, wound healing, structure, anatomy of dead bodies, and this is also evolved into experimentations. So this is actually starting the modern anatomy and physiology class, and then the creations of new terminology that used by scientists all over the world. And finally, study of corpses and cadaver also increase the understandings about the human body structure and function. So what is anatomy? So anatomy is the study of structure. Okay? So this is study of structure. For example, how the uh, heart look like, the shape, and then the locations, what kind of cell and tissue make up the heart, and etc. Okay, so this is about the structure or morphology of the human body. The physiology is the study of functions. Usually answer the question of how the hormone control our body, for example, how the nervous system uh, control our action, okay? And how, for example, the hair growing and etc. So this is physiology, which is study about function. And this is very important that you do understand the structure fits with the functions. So by looking the structure, you should be able mostly to guess the functions of that structure. For example, if we compare between mouth and the nose, you should be able to see that both organs have holes. So what is the holes function? This is used for putting something into it or taking something from it. Okay, so like for examples, mouth, it is used for putting the food, eating. And then the nose, it as a whole is used for the air to go in and out. But if you see closely the inside structure, then you also see the differences between mouth and the nose. Inside the mouth, it has additional structure that function to help digestions of the food. So there are teeth, there are tongue, there are also salivary gland that produce the saliva to help digestion, and there is also a sensory system that used for sensing the taste of the food. And if you compare with the nose also have the hole, but you cannot put food in the nose because the inside structure of the nose do not have the structure that help us to digest the food. You see inside the nose, there are hairs, there are mucus. All of this actually used for filtering the air, trapping the dust, or maybe bacteria, viruses that enter into the respiratory system. So the function of the nose is for breathing, and the function of the mouth is for digestive system. Even though both of them has the holes, but if you see closely, they have different function because of their different structure. So again, structure fit with the function. Look at this picture, okay? You see the hand, it has fingers that you can grab something. So this structure helps you to perform its function. So structure fit with the function. The ear, for example, it has a earlobe that help us to take the sound wave. So it's actually receive the sound wave, and then also there is a holes in the ear, which is called the ear canal, that will receive the sound wave, and then inside the ear you will have the ear ossicles, which is the bones that will vibrate when the sound wave enter into the ear, and then it will be converted into the sounds that you do understand, that you hear. So this is the functions of the organs, which is will be fit with the structure. So structure fit the function, and this is really important basic uh, fundamentals knowledge about the anatomy and physiology. So the anatomy or structure will always fit the physiology or the function. Now, if we see humans, okay, humans actually an organism. It has or it consists of organizations. So, for example, in human body, we have many organs, and in the organ there are tissues, and each tissue has different type of cells, and inside the cells there are molecules. So there is a organizations that form the organism, the human individual. So if we look at closely and we put that level organization from the simplest one to the most complex one, then we will see that each individual or organism will consist of atoms, okay, subatomic particles like protons, neutrons, and electrons. And these subatomic particles will combine, organize, okay, to form the atoms. And several atoms will also bind together to form the molecules. And the small molecules, they combine to make a bigger molecules. And these bigger molecules, they make our or cell organelles. And then organelles inside the cell, they all organize, they all have a functions to finally make the cell. Okay, so the cell, starting from the cells, it is known as a living materials, because the cell is actually the smallest unit of living. Okay? So starting from the cell, which is consists of many molecules, then the life starts. There are several organisms that only have one cell. It's called the unicellular organism, like bacteria, for example, algae, protozoa. They only have one cell, but they're able to perform living function. Because what? Because cell is the basic unit or the smallest unit of living. Most other organisms like human, animal, plants, they have million of cells. So they are called as the multicellular organism that consists of many cells. Okay? So cell is the basic unit of living, and cell, the same shape, the one that have the same function, they will organize together to make tissue. Okay, to make tissue. In human body, there are only four types of tissue. The first one is called the epithelial tissue. The second one is called the connective tissue. The third one is called the muscle tissue. And the last one is called the nervous tissue. So cell, they combine together to make one of these, four type of tissue, whether epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. And then this tissue, several tissue will combine together, organize together to make an organs. So the next level will be organ that consists of different type of tissue. Like for example, the heart. The heart is an organ that consists of different type of tissue. There is epithelial tissue in the heart, which is the layer of the heart. There is muscle tissue in the heart, which is the muscle, the heart muscle that pump the blood. And there is connective tissue, which is the blood itself is connective tissue. And there is also nervous tissue. So there is a neurons, nervous system that control the heartbeat, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. So this is an organ, which is organization of tissues. And then many organs that have similar function will make the organ system. In human body, there are 11 organ systems. Okay, the first one is the integumentary system, which is the skin. The primary organ of this integumentary system is the skin. The next one is under the skin. You have many muscles, so each muscle is actually an organ. There are more than 700 muscles that combine together to make what we call the muscular system. Okay, so muscular system consists of 700, about 700 muscles. And then this muscle attached to the bones. So there are 206 bones in human body, and all of these bones will make what we call the skeletal system. We also have the system that help us to digest the food. It's called the digestive system. Start from the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, intestine, rectum, anus. There is also liver, pancreas, teeth, uh, tongue, the salivary glands. All of these organs, they organize together to make the digestive system. There is also the respiratory system. Start with the nose as the first organ, and then the pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, and lungs. Okay, so this is a respiratory system. Another system is lymphatic system that consists of organs like red bone marrow, thymus gland, lymphatic vessels, and etc. There is another system is called the cardiovascular system or circulatory system that consists of the heart and the blood vessels. There is also another system is reproductive system. For male and female, they have different organs that make up their reproductive system. And there is another system, the endocrine system, that consists of glands that produce the hormones. It's called the endocrine glands, like, for example, the thyroid gland, pineal gland, anterior pituitary glands, and many other glands. So these are the system. There's a nervous system that consists of brain, spinal cord, and the nerve. Okay, so there are 11 organ system in human body. We will learn that system one by one later. And then all of these 11 organ system, okay, so 11 organ system will organize together to finally make an organism. So each of us is an organism that consists of 11 organ system that consists of many organs, okay, thousand of organs, and then each organ consists of maybe two, three, four type of tissues, and each tissue consists of many cells, maybe sometimes 100,000 or even million cells that make up one type of tissue. And the cell is consists of molecules, okay, waters in it, lipids like in the cell membrane, nucleus. There is a DNA, which is also molecules, and molecule actually combination of atoms, and each atom it has the proton, neutrons, and electrons. So these are the organizations of living. The simplest ones will be atoms, and the most complex one will be the organism. This is the level of organizations in a diagram. So atoms, again, atom, two or more atoms will combine to make molecules, and then bigger molecules. And these molecules, they organize together to create cell. There are several types of cell. And then that cell will combine to organize to make a tissue. In this case is muscle cell. They organize to make muscle tissue. Okay, and then this muscle tissue over here, okay, with other tissue like for example this blood inside, this connective tissue. There is also uh, the layer of this heart. It has epithelial tissue. It also receive the nerve that coming from the nervous tissue, so it's make an organs. And then we have many organs in our body. Okay, so group of organ that have similar function then will organize together to create an organ system. And there are 11 organ system in human body. For example, in this case, okay, the heart, which is organ, and the blood vessel, which is another organ. So two organs over here, okay, create a system is called a cardiovascular system. Okay, so this is cardiovascular system, which is the system that consists of the heart and the blood vessel. So only two organs that make this cardiovascular system. And then the 11 organ system. So there are 11 organ system. They all combine, organized to make organism. Individual human is an organism. So this is the level of organization. Now, some clinical applications that usually use to observe the human anatomy or structure and also functions. There are several types, maybe invasive or non-invasive. In these examples, in this textbook, is give you the non-invasive technique, which is this technique will not take as samples like a blood sample from our body. So this is a non-invasive, like for example, using ultrasound. This is high frequency sound that provide the image from inside the body. So usually the image that is given or taken by this ultrasound is soft internal structure. So we can see maybe the liver, the heart. Okay, so soft internal structure. Or maybe it can be used for checking the pregnancy to see the soft baby inside the mother wombs in the uterus. And MR, okay, magnetic resonance scan. This is using magnetic field, and then it will also give the images of the internal structure, like for example for the brain. So usually use the MRI scan, also using for looking whether there is a kidney stone or not in the kidney. Okay, the main themes of human anatomy and physiology. So we're gonna learn, okay, about cells, and also we're gonna learn a little bit about chemistry that make up the cells, and then we're gonna learn the normals internal environment or conditions of human body, and then we're gonna learn some structure and also function of different type of cell, and of course we're gonna combine and discuss about the structure and functions of each organs. And then finally, this is the most important one, which is we're gonna use all of that information to learn about what we call the homeostasis. So homeostasis is the internal body conditions that has to be maintained in order to be healthy or normal. Like for examples, okay, so body temperature, okay, body temperature, okay. So the homeostasis for body temperature is around 98 degree. So this is actually not a fixed number. This is the range number or the range conditions. Like for example, healthy or normal body temperature is around 95 to 99 degree. So if our body temperature is between this number, between this range, then we are normal, we are healthy. And this is what we call the homeostasis. Another example is, for example, blood pressure. Okay, so normal blood pressure is around from 100, maybe 16, 120 uh, systoles, and diastole maybe around 75 to 80. Okay, usually written. Okay, the average is 120 to 80 blood pressure, systole and diastole. So this is the homeostasis for blood pressure, and it has to be maintained. If we are out from this homeostasis, mostly we becoming sick, or maybe some people have disorders because they cannot maintain this homeostasis, or even the worst case, if the body unable to maintain the homeostasis, then they will be dying. Okay, so that is due to the inability of our body to perform their normal functions to control the homeostasis. Okay, uh, there are some other information that we need to learn and study in order to know the homeostasis, in order to know the normal structure and the normal body function. Like, for example, we have to know the gradients of chemicals or maybe electricity between cell and outside the cell, the permeability of the cell against some different type of chemicals, maybe glucoses, amino acid, calcium, potassium, chloride, and etc. And we also gonna learn the cellular differentiation, so specialization of cells. Each cell, they have different functions, different roles, and we will also learn the membranes mechanism. So the main function of the cell membrane is actually to control the movement of chemicals in and out. So this is the very important function of the cell membrane. And there's also cell-to-cell communication. And cell, they do not have mouth, ear, so they cannot really talk like human, talking with their mouth and hear with their ear, listen with their ear. So they do not have that one. So what cell have? They have chemicals. So usually they communicate by producing chemicals, and the cell that accept that chemicals responds that chemical, then will perform the action based on what chemical they receive. So this is the way cell communicate using chemicals. Okay, balance, and again, this is very important. Our body have to keep our functions, the body function within the balance, within the normal range, and also the energy that keep the cell alive. We need energy from outside, which is mostly taken from the food. So the food is actually chemical energy. This is potential energy that will enter into our cell, and it will be converted into ATP, which is the energy, the currency of the energy that used inside our body to perform all living action. And then the way the homeostasis does this action with what we call the feedback loops. So there is a feedback between chemical to other chemical, whether increase, decrease, and etc. So there are two types of feedback loop, which is negative feedback and positive feedback loop. Okay, so our body usually using the negative feedback loop about maybe or more than 90%. So the negative feedback loop is the most important type of feedback loops in our body. And maybe we use about 10% in some condition, yeah, using the positive feedback loops. We're gonna talk about this one later. And we also have to know what are the characteristic of life. So we cannot really define, make a definition what is life, but we can give or list the characteristic of life. It if the material or the thing has all of these characteristic, then that thing is considered as a living thing. But if the thing do not have this characteristic, or maybe one, two, three of this characteristic, then that thing will not be called as a living thing. Okay? So what are the characteristic of life? First, all living things will be growing. So there is a growth, which is increase in cell size and also cell number. For the unicellular organism, the growth is by increasing the size a little bit. But for the multicellular organism like us, for example, the growth is also increasing the size and also increasing the cell numbers. Just remember, we are actually start from zygote, which is only one cell that combine within sperm and the eggs. And this zygote then will divide into million of cells. So this is increase in numbers. And the living things also reproduce. They have to reproduce, which is productions of new individual. If they do not reproduce, then they will be extinct. So the reproduction is another characteristic of life. And then all living things will be respond to the stimulus. This is what we call the responsiveness. So they will react into stimulus. Like for examples, if someone touch you, then you will know it and you will react or respond to that stimulus. Plant, for example, they respond to the light stimulus, to the growing up. They become taller. They actually looking for the light. So this is response to the environment, which is responsiveness. Living thing also perform what we call the movement. Right? The movement can be the whole body movement, like human move from one place to another place, like animal they move one place to another place, or maybe movement inside the body itself. So there is a movement of water inside our body, movement of chemical food inside our body. Plant, for example, they don't really move from one place to another place, but there's a movement inside the plant. The water have to be taken from the soil, it has to be delivered to the leaf which is above. Cool. So there is a movement over there. So that's another characteristic of life. And all living things also perform what we call the metabolism. This is all chemical reaction inside the body. So inside the cell, we have mitochondria that will produce the ATP from the glucose plus oxygen. So this is example of metabolism. So inside the cell, the ATP will be used to move our muscle, for example, to contract our muscle. So there is a metabolism for that. Okay, so this metabolism consists of two main types, which is anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is the process of making big things from little things. It's called the synthesis. Catabolism is the process of breakdowns bigger molecules into smaller molecules. Okay. Example of anabolism is photosynthesis, where plant able to create bigger molecules is called sugar or glucose from smaller molecules, which are water and carbon dioxide. Example of catabolism is cellular respiration, where our cell able to break the glucose, big molecules, into smaller molecules, into water and carbon dioxide plus ATP. Energy will be produced from this process. So this is metabolism. All cell will perform this. It doesn't matter whether bacteria or animal. Respiration, this is also another uh, characteristic of uh, life. And this respiration, especially cellular respiration, is the process of making energy. So ATP will be produced by this process. Digestion, okay, some animal, human, when we talk about human, then we perform this activity, whereas we break down big molecule into smaller molecule and we absorb it and then we use it inside the cell to actually making bigger molecules. Right? And then there is a circulations also in human body, in animal excretion, which is the removing of waste product. This kind of characteristic of human life or animals life. Requirement for organism, especially for humans. Okay, we need water, we need food, oxygen, heat, and pressure. These are several environment conditions required for living, especially for animal or human. So water is the most abundant substance in our body. So our body actually consists of 70% of water. So this is the most abundant molecules in our body. Cell consists of 70% of water. And water is really important molecule because water will be used for metabolism. So water is the best solvent, the best media for chemical reaction. Water also used for transporting things. So blood plasma is actually mostly water. So the blood plasma used for transporting hormones, transporting vitamins, and other molecules. Okay, and then food. This is actually the energy. So this is what we call the potential energy. Okay, that is conserved in its chemical. So this is chemical energy that has potential to be converted into the ATP. So ATP is the currency energy that is used by the cell. And then oxygen is also needed because without oxygen, then we will not be able to convert this chemical energy into ATP. So chemical energy, which is glucose plus oxygen, will be converted into the ATP. So oxygen is needed for human, for the animal. And the heat is also needed because humans is actually uh, organism that has to maintain their body temperature within certain range, okay, between 75 to, I mean, sorry, 95 to 98 degree, okay. So it has to be maintained. So it needs heat. That heat is coming from maybe outside and also coming from inside our body. So cellular activity will also produce heat. Okay, that's metabolism of the cell will produce the heat that will maintain our body temperature within this range. And then, of course, pressure is also needed because pressure is needed for example, when we absorbing the oxygen, uh, absorbing the nutrients, they all need pressure in order to move from one place, from one organ, from one cell, from one tissue to another tissue, for example. And inside our body, we have fluid. So that the most abundant molecule inside the body, which is fluid or water. Okay, so water or fluid. So there are this water is actually located in different place inside our body. Inside the cell, 70% water. Okay, this fluid or water inside the cell is called the intracellular fluid or ICF. Okay. And then outside the cell, okay, between the cell with another cell, there is also fluid. It's called the ECF, extracellular fluid, that can be, okay, several types. If it is inside the blood vessel, like this, the extracellular fluid is called the blood plasma. If it is just between the cells in the organ, then that fluid is called the interstitial fluid. So ECF, so extracellular fluid, can be interstitial fluid or maybe blood plasma if it is in the blood vessel. The homeostasis. So remember, this is the main theme, right? The main topic in our A&P, okay, anatomy and physiology class. So mostly we're gonna learn about body structure, normal body structure that will control the normal body function. So this is what we call the homeostasis. We also will learn a little bit about disease and disorder, which is abnormality. This is out from the homeostasis condition. So we're going to learn that a little bit. But mostly in this class, we will learn about homeostasis, which is normal body structure and normal body functions. So this homeostasis is actually auto or self-regulation. So our body have the ability to control the condition inside the body within normal range. This is auto-regulation or self-regulation. and it has to be done anytime. So all the time, our body will perform this homeostasis. And there is always challenge. There is always challenge that coming from outside our body or maybe from inside our body that has to be controlled. Like for example, temperature, outside temperature. During winter time and during summertime, it's gonna be different challenge. And then our body have to fight that challenge. Our body have to control that challenge in order to make within homeostasis, within normal range. So this homeostasis, it has three main parts that will perform their function. The first part is called the receptor. The receptor is the one that receive the stimulus, receive and also detecting the stimulus. Like for example, we have the receptor for touch, for example, in our skin. So it will receive the touch stimulus. Or there is also receptor for body temperature, for the temperature. So this is the one that receive or detect the stimulus. From the receptor, then the information will be carried into the control center. The main control center in human body is the brain. So brain is the one that will receive the information from the receptor. And the control center will produce response, produce something. And this response will be carried into the effector. The effector is the organ that actually perform action based on the order that coming from the control center or from the brain, and it is based on the stimulus that is received by the receptor. Okay, so effector, there are 5 types of effector. Okay, the first one is the skeletal muscle. So skeletal muscle will contract based on the order from the brain. And then there is a cardiac muscle. Okay. And there is a smooth muscle. Okay. Number 4 is exocrine gland, like sweat gland, for example. That's example of exocrine gland. And the endocrine gland, the gland that produce hormone. So these are the 5 types of effector in our body, which is the organ that will perform action based on the order coming from the brain, from the control center. And the control center, when they produce the order, it is based on what type of stimulus that coming from the receptor. So receptor give information to the control center. Control center will give order to the effector to perform action. Okay, example. Okay, so if it is winter time, for example, then our skin, our body will receive, okay, the receptor will receive the information about very low temperature outside, very cold. Okay, so that cold will be received by receptor. Okay, so cold and then received by receptor. Okay, so the stimulus is cold weather or cold temperature, and the receptor will give the information to the brain, which is the control center. Okay, and the brain then will order the skeletal muscle, which is one of the effector, to contract, or what we call to sever. Okay, so the our body, our muscle will severing in order to increase the body temperature. So this response produced by the skeletal muscle, which is severing, will increase body temperature, and it will make our body stay within normal body condition. So this is what we call the actions in performing homeostasis. And this is the feedback that we have over here in this example is the negative feedback system. Okay, why negative feedback system? Because the cold weather outside is actually will lower our body temperature, and then the skeletal muscles, when it is shivering, will increase our body temperature, and finally, it will make balance. Okay, so lower, and then the body will increase it to make our body temperature within the homeostasis or balance condition. So this is an example of negative feedback. Okay, so again, receptor, stimulus will receive that receptor. Okay, so receptor will receive that stimulus, and then receptor will carry that information to control center. And again, the main control center in our body is the brain. There are some other control center, like for example, endocrine gland, but the main one is the brain. And then the control center will give the order to the effector, which is muscle and gland. Okay, there are three types of muscle and there are two types of glands to produce the action, right, response. And this response will make the condition back to the normal uh, situation. Okay, so this is what we call the homeostasis feedback loop. Okay, and again, the most important loop that we use in homeostasis is called the negative feedback loops, and this is about 90% of our homeostasis using these negative feedback loops. Yeah. It is called negative because the response is actually oppose, or change the stimulus in the opposite direction. If the stimulus, for example, increase, maybe increasing the body temperature, okay, so this is stimulus increase, then the response by the effector will decrease, for example, decrease the body temperature. So the response is opposite to the stimulus. If the stimulus, for example, decrease, like decreasing body temperature, then the response will increase the body temperature. Okay, so this is also negative feedback system. And this is the most type of feedback loop that is used for our homeostasis. Okay, so this is an example of how our body temperature will be controlled by these negative feedback loops. The other feedback loops is using what we call the positive feedback loop, and usually very rare, only 10% or less than percent, and less than 10% our body using these positive feedback loops. This is uncommon, rare type of feedback loop, but it is sometimes used in order to control the homeostasis. Examples, the famous example is when the mother giving birth, then it's gonna be using the positive feedback loops. Okay, like for examples, when the baby is ready uh, to to born, okay, then the uterine muscle will be contract, right? So there is a increase contractions in uterine muscle. And this contraction of uterine muscles will be received by the receptor, and the receptor will give the information to the brain, the control center, and telling the brain that the uterine muscle is contracted in order to deliver the baby. And the brains, especially the hypothalamus, then will produce hormone is called the oxytocin, uh, or OT, and the oxytocin will go to the uterine wall, which is the muscle of the uterus, to increase more of the contractions in order to push the baby out. And this is, if you see that feedback, the stimulus is increased, okay, and the response is also increased. So the response, okay, stimulus, this is response. So the response is actually going the same direction with the stimulus. Compared to the negative feedback system, the response is going to the opposite direction. If it is increased, it's going to be decreased. But if it is decreased, then the response will be increased. That's negative feedback system. For the positive feedback system, if the stimulus increase, then the response will be also increased. If the stimulus is decreased, then the response will be decreasing again. So only one direction for this uh, positive feedback system. When it is stopped, like in these examples with the baby birth, the response will stop after the delivering the baby. So when the baby is out, when the baby is born, then this contraction will stop. Okay, so this is examples of positive feedback system. And again, it's very rare used by our body. Okay, so this is how this diagram showing us the examples of positive feedback system. Okay, so start from here. Okay, so the uterine wall, the muscle is actually stretching, contracting, and then this that stimulus received by the receptor. Okay, so the receptor will send the information to the control center, and the control center will produce the order, which is that orders go to the effector, which is the muscle of the uterus, the uterine wall muscle. Okay, and that uterine wall muscle will increase more contraction. Okay, so stimulus increase, the response also increase. Okay, I think I will stop here for part of chapter 1 lecture. I will continue again for the second part of chapter 1. See you next time. Bye bye.